Right now, ordinary Iranians are in the streets, shutting down bazaars, clashing with security forces, and openly chanting against the regime. Not because of a foreign invasion, not because of a color revolution hashtag, but because their currency is collapsing. Food prices are exploding, and the government that claims divine authority can't keep the lights on. This started quietly. Merchants closing shops, workers striking, students protesting, and then it began to spread. City after city, province after province. What you're seeing now isn't a protest. It's a stress fracture in the Islamic Republic itself. The Western press will tell you that this is economic unrest. Tehran will tell you it's foreign agitation. But both of these explanations are evasions. What's actually happening is simpler and far more dangerous. A regime that survives on control is losing the consent of the people it rules. And once that happens, history tends to move fast.
Radical Christian nationalist pastor, Joel Webbon.
Joel Webbon? I'm going to talk about Joel Webbon today.
Joel Webbon has been excellent.
At the foot of Mount Sinai, a nation met its God in thunder and fire. From that covenant flowed the faith of Abraham, Moses, and the prophets, fulfilled, not replaced, in Christ. But somewhere between the martyrs and the modern West, the truth was blurred. Politicians and pastors began speaking of a Judeo-Christian civilization, a phrase born not of Sinai, but in Washington, tracing its roots not to Moses, but to the Pharisees. The hyphenated heresy challenges the myth of the hyphen, tracing how it reshaped Christian identity, redefined the church's witness, and bound modern faith to political Zionism. Pick up your copy today on Amazon.com.
We're back. This is NXR Studios. I am Joel Webbon, and we also have
Antonio Griffith.
and
Wesley Todd.
all right. My day job is primarily pastoring a local church, but NXR Studios is a right-wing, explicitly, unapologetically Christian media company, and we are bringing you the news. For those of you who are new to the channel, we live stream on Mondays and Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and then on Wednesdays, also at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we have our special, NXR The Special. It is a in-depth, multiple-part series where we bring a notable guest on the right wing into the studio, in the flesh, and have a long-form, multiple-part conversation with that individual. Right now, we're right in the middle of a series with Nicholas J. Fuentes. We just aired on this past Wednesday, 2 days ago, the second episode of a 10-part series with Nick Fuentes. Next Wednesday will be episode 3. So Wednesdays is the special, season 1 for Q1, the year of our Lord 2026. The special is a 10-part series with Nick Fuentes, and starting in April on Wednesdays, April and May, and stretching into June, we'll have a 10-part series with another notable guest. We have already booked the guest. You will recognize him. You'll be surprised that we were able to get him. It'll be awesome. We'll make more announcements about details and who that is as we get closer to the month of April. Again, Monday and Friday, that's the live stream. That's where we're bringing hot topics that are relevant and important from a biblical perspective to you. And today we're going to be talking about Iran. We're also going to be talking about the ICE shootings that have just occurred, bringing you the news. Last thing, little detail that's important for us, important for you. If you want to get the word out, help us out by subscribing on YouTube and clicking the bell. Make sure you follow us on X. My handle is @JoelWebbon. @JoelWebbon on X. We broadcast live on both YouTube and X and also on Rumble. So make sure to search NXR Studios on Rumble, subscribe, click the bell, and help us out with this video. Like it and share it as much as you possibly can. Let's trigger the algorithm and get it out to as many people as we can. Wes, you're going to start us off with the news today.
All right, so if you've been following the news over especially the last 48 hours, protests across all 31 provinces in Iran have grown to the point where Iran has cut off the internet basically to the entire country. This is done so that the grassroots movements that are operating have no way to communicate. They're not able to translate, be here at a certain time, bring this. They found out that a lot of weapons and munitions are typically stashed beneath mosques, and so they've been targeting those. We see in the capital city of Tehran, a lot of government buildings actually being set on fire. And there's threats basically at this point that the Ayatollah, he's going to have to potentially flee to Russia. This would be a similar path that the president of Syria took after Syria collapsed last year. And so you have explosive riots going on, and you have really no way of telling what's going on. The son of the previous Shah, he's here in the United States. He's been telling the president that what's going on is very similar to the Iranian Revolution of '79. When the government cuts off the internet, that's because they want to do things to protesters they don't want being displayed on Western media. And so he's urging the president of the United States, they're cutting off internet so you can't see what they're about to do to all of these people that they're angry are protesting the current regime. They've cut it off. They've blacked it out. They're going to be committing human rights violations there. President Trump, you need to go in and do something. The other piece of this is
They're
that...
chanting, real quick, they're not chanting death to America.
No.
These protests, they're chanting death to the Islamic regime in Iran.
Death to the supreme leader as well.
Right, to the supreme leader. And so it's kind of, and we're going to get into the history going back to the 70s and, how it's kind of almost a reverse of what originally happened. And what originally happened, shocker, that was our fault, our Western influence.
We did that one.
Doing that one, regime change, right? Because we care about democracy, right? Anytime oil is discovered, the fire jets stream up. It's like, time to export democracy, right? We found oil. So back in the day, it very much was us. This is not us. This is not necessarily, now it'll probably become us. We'll see how we get involved. I hope we don't. But what's happening right now is the more, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the more secular Muslims, because of Western influence over the previous decades, who are more democratic, who have kind of, they may be culturally Islamic. They are culturally Islamic, but they're not really practicing. They're not very religious. They've been westernized, and so they've gone to higher
They're like
degrees.
a lot of Christians today.
That's right. They've gone to higher degrees of education. These, and so that group in Iran is revolting, and then other groups that may not be as highly educated but are feeling the pinch economically, impoverished, are following their lead and protesting not death to America, Islam forever, but the opposite, death to the Islamic regime, the current leader, and this has to stop because we're on the brink of collapse economically.
Yeah, and just a couple things. So just quickly to go back to the internet blackouts that are occurring. So there's two sort of parts to it. Now, there's the part that I think is the most likely, which is what Wes said, which is they are going to attempt to respond to these protests in violent ways, and they don't want that to be seen. Their argument would be, from the Islamic State, that is, they would say, well, we're actually blacking out the internet because of the Western influences that are causing the protests. And so if you look at the Shah's son, Pahlavi, he is currently residing in Washington, D.C., since his dad was actually exiled in the Iranian Revolution in the late 1970s, early 1980s. He has basically been living outside of Iran. And so he's actually one of the people who's driving calls for protests and demonstrations. And so those are kind of, just to be fair and say, these are the two sides of the coin. One coin is if you trust the Ayatollah, they're trying to block out these Western secular influences that are causing disruption in Iran. And you have the perspective of the West, which is, no, you're actually going to commit atrocious crimes. So that's just
funny, the Shah's son too, because that was one of the Shah's biggest fears. He feared that if he left it to someone weak, that when he left the monarchy in Iran prior to the revolution, that it would collapse. And so it's kind of funny that his son is still carrying the banner here. 50 years later, dictator. His dad is dead. The revolution was successful.
Still calling
He's
himself the
coming
crown
back
prince.
in,
Yeah.
calling himself the crown prince, saying, no, the people must rise up. And that's the interesting point about this. So there's, of course, Iran's nuclear program. We talked all about that over the summer when the U.S. executed a number of strikes
12
on their
days of war.
different uranium enrichment programs. So Iran, breaking the deals of this anti-nuclear weapons proliferation pact, it appears that they've been enriching uranium in order to be able to build nuclear weapons. But the people aren't in the streets protesting that. Because Iran's been building nuclear weapons, they've endured a number of sanctions from Western states. So Western states have said, we're not going to do trade with you, we're not going to buy this from you, we're going to cut you off from the rest of the world. What that's resulted in then is, for the people, practically speaking, their currency has experienced massive inflation.
40% month over month in recent months. Like, you think we're talking
Almost
about
as high as ours.
3% being high. They're experiencing 40% inflation. The real currency currently, 1.4 million to $1 US.
Just a little pocket change, a little walking around money. Yeah, so they're practically, they can't feed their family, they can't save money, and they're saying, who cares if you have a nuclear program? We're starving over here.
Correct.
And that is, and it's a practical lesson. You can have all these grand ideas, and you'll see some of this from the revolution in 79 as well. You can have all these grand ideas, but if the people of your republic, the people of your state are not happy, good luck keeping control on them when time for revolution arises,
So
because they're
back to
going
your
to take
point,
to the
Joel.
streets,
Yeah.
and they're going to do what they're doing now. They're going to burn and loot and say, we're done with the current system.
And as Joel was saying, in terms of it not being us, well, I would say this: rest assured, if there's conflict happening somewhere in the world, we're involved. But in this particular case, it's not, U.S. sort of intelligence agents on the ground. It's actually these comprehensive sanctions going all the way back to 2015 in the Obama-Iran deal, if you remember that. These comprehensive sanctions applied to them are causing all of this economic disruption.
Right.
And that's why the people are, so it's sort of a second order cause from the U.S. and the West that's causing all of these demonstrations and the protests and the rioting. It's just important to note that one of the reasons, and we don't have to go too far into this, but one of the reasons the U.S. is opposing Iran is what Wes said, the nuclear enrichment program.
Right.
But we happen to have our greatest ally in that region who has the ear of the president and who's making a point to the president to say, we need to depose this regime.
Right.
This regime is so hostile to Israel. The U.S. needs to be involved in removing him. And of course, the U.S. hasn't actually made it policy yet for regime change, but every indication Trump is giving is toward that end as of now. So Trump is saying things like, to the Ayatollah, he's saying, if you are violent, we will hit you hard. He's making direct threats to the Ayatollah, saying, if you are conducting military action against these demonstrations, the U.S. will respond. And I think he even said in the press conference, or maybe a White House official said this, he says, it is a harsh response that the U.S. will provide. We are locked, quote, locked and loaded. And so this is the kind of the context here is we've got an ally in the Middle East. We've got these disruptions and protests happening. There's obviously oil at play, right? And Iran is a great exporter. Obviously, with the sanctions right now, Iran exports approximately 0% oil to the United States, but that could change overnight with the regime change. That could drive oil prices down. That can improve the Western economies. And so there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of moving pieces.
So you're telling me there's still an angle where this is happening and the U.S. has an incentive with oil?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's a classic. This is a classic situation.
It's another day.
Right.
Another day.
Another day that ends
There
in
was a
Y.
good comment from someone. He said, I'm a Persian Christian. You can scroll up a
Yeah,
little.
so I was going to ask
go
you,
ahead.
can you fact check that? Because I've seen that multiple times now, that part of the hostility towards Iran currently is not because they're Muslim shouting death to the West, but actually that within Iran, so this doesn't mean everybody, right? But that in Iran, statistically, in terms of increase, that the Christian church in Iran is the fastest growing Christian church currently in the world, or at least up there, comparable and in the top 10 countries. Now, again, understand how statistics work, okay? Because I don't want people to be like, oh, I can't believe he said that. That's retarded, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not saying that the majority of Iran is Christian. I'm not saying that. To be fastest growing, okay? So here's an example. Right now, one of the fastest growing sects of Christianity in America is Eastern Orthodoxy. But they're still the smallest. Way more Catholics, way more Protestants, right? But they're one of the fastest growing. Think of it like stocks, right? So like if you're thinking of like NVIDIA, fantastic if it was 2022, 2023, 2024. But NVIDIA probably in 2026, if you're purchasing their stock, it's going to, I think it'll probably grow, but it's not going to be 10x returns. Whereas a penny stock, something that's smaller, something like that, it can have multiples, right? It's also riskier. So right now, I have seen that multiple places, and we're going to, right now, Wes is about to verify whether or not it's true. But the point is, again, not that there's more Christians in Iran in terms of total population, percent of population, than other countries, or blah, blah. That's not the claim. The claim is that small group, right, starting as a mustard seed, like Jesus said, there might be something there. Let me cook. But the small group of Christians that have been in Iran, that small group is, in terms of its speed of growth, it's still the minority, but its speed of growth is faster, just like Eastern Orthodox in America, Christians in Iran, that it's one of the fastest growing countries. Christianity is growing faster in Iran than virtually any other country right now in the world. Is there any validity?
There is. Let me give two caveats.
Okay.
First of all, in 79, when you bring in the Islamic Republic, Iran becomes the most Islamic state in the world, essentially. In the modern world, they are the most Islamic state that you will see as far as Sharia law. Go ahead.
And there was actually a referendum. So the Ayatollah, the current Ayatollah's father, comes into power after the Shah's sort of exile and deposition. And he actually holds a referendum. The question is, should Iran be an Islamic state? 98.2% of people said yes, voted yes on the referendum. Now, obviously, there was accusations of ballot harvesting and those sorts of things, but in Western nations, that was largely considered to be a legitimate referendum. So that's kind of just to add some stats to what you're saying. It's absolutely
so significant Islamic base, especially 46 years ago.
Right.
And it is still persecuted today. So practically, statistically, people are not answering a survey. Oh, Christian. Oh, yeah, no problem. So the data is a little tough to get. The estimates are, and this is not just in the last 2 to 3 years, the last 10 to 20 years, they have been the fastest growing church in the world with about 300,000 to 3 million Christian converts. That's the best estimates that we have there. They're a country of close to 100 million people. And so you have potentially 1 to 3% of the country just in the last decade converting to Christianity. And he's absolutely correct. And what you have here is a pendulum swing. Right. So we should go back all the way in a moment here to 53 and the coup, but you've had this pendulum swing towards Western values, not the good ones, the bad ones, and that resulted in this backlash and this swing, as you were getting at in 79, to Islam. And they set up the most Islamic state the world has seen.
Right, so
but
you had a
what we're seeing
secular
again
leader, like a puppet that was
swing
placed
back.
there by the West. So a secular leader who was not very Islamic, maybe culturally, and kind of, tip the hat and use some of the rhetoric. But he was a puppet. He was placed by the West. We interfered, and it was to be favorable towards us with economic policies and oil and all these kinds of
particularly the
things.
Cold War.
I was about to say, right on the border of the Soviet Union, you had Iran, and so we wanted an ally there.
And so that's what happened historically, and we're going to get into that in a moment. And the backlash then was this cultural and political ground and religious groundswell of Islam as the reaction to secularism that we dropped our puppet, there with Western interference. But now, in many ways, it seems like there's a Christian uprising and backlash to the Islamic regime that has been there ever since. And I know it's more than this, okay? So hear my framing here. I know it's more than this. This is going to be, risk being an overgeneralization and too simplistic. It's more than this, but here's my point. I don't think it's less than what I'm about to say. All right, so you guys tell me if this is fair framing. Not that it's exhaustive or comprehensive, but that these elements, although more than this would be true, it's not less than this. Currently what you have is a groundswell and quickly increasing Christian presence in Iran, and not a bunch of chanting death to America, death to the West, but actually death to the Islamic regime. That's the people. Death to the Islamic regime and Christianity exponentially increasing, and Israel wants us to bomb them. Is that fair?
I think that's the lay of the land.
That sounds right. Okay. It's another day that ends in Y. Okay, so now let's get into the history.
All right. So there's been kind of a renaissance of this idea of we should do regime change and we should be involved in scenarios like this. And Nick Fuentes actually mentioned this in this week's episode, What is World Jewry? That there's a new spin on it where it can kind of be, it's actually based to support regime change in Iran and to go back to the monarchy. Nobody cool these days is a neocon, right? Nobody's wearing that label like, hey, all the cool kids are going to the neocon conference. People don't wear that label. So the ideas are getting repackaged. And one of these ideas is that it's in America's best interest to support regime change in Iran and going back to the monarchy, going back to the way, like kind of a Western puppet over there, that would be the best thing ever, that would be base, that would be good for the country, it'd be good for Western relations. And we're in this problem in the first place because we interfered in a country that we didn't understand and we didn't know what we were doing. And so to rewind all the way back, 1951, just a couple years after the end of World War II, Iran elects Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, and he nationalizes the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company called AIOC. Now, Britain had been getting a pretty unfair, pretty leveraged deal of oil from Iran. I mean, this is all we're talking about. It's oil, 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 and money. And Britain's been getting this really unfair deal that they would really love to see continue. But when the prime minister comes in and nationalizes the company, he basically threatens the one-sided deal that they've had. London tries sanctions. London tries all these different things. They try diplomatic pressure. None of it works to get them to budge. The prime minister puts his foot down. He says, no, we're nationalizing it. This is going to be work in the interest of Iran. The U.S. comes in. They need an ally on the border of the Soviet Union. The Cold War is heating up. So Britain and the U.S., they both look at the current president and they go, this guy sucks. We need our own people in there. We need a Western ally. We've got a lot of interest in this region. And so the CIA and MI6 worked together to take the exiled Shah and install him in the coup that is the 1953 Iranian coup. And they install him as a monarch. He suppresses political dissidents. And it's for about basically the next 25 years that there's a very Western regime in Iran. So you have things like women voting, you have things like modern Western entertainment, commercialization, education. Early on in 73, there's the Iranian-Israeli war. And all these other nations in the Middle East that have all this oil money, they agree on an embargo. And so they say, as long as this war is going on, we're not going to sell our oil to the West, with one exception being Iran. Iran says, we will sell it to you, and it boosts their economy incredibly. And so Iran is being rapidly westernized, rapidly growing in Western values. They've got tons of money coming in because they're the only one that didn't embargo their oil. However, in 75, oil prices crash. People start getting mad at the Shah. And what you had still here, even as Iran is westernizing in the 50s and the 60s, you still had a 90% Muslim country. So you have this 90% Muslim country, and the CIA and MI6 propped up a monarch there that really wanted to bring in Western values. And so for 2 to 3 decades, they're trying to push these Western values in the Muslim country, and it's like taking a balloon and placing it under the water and trying to hold it down there. Eventually, that Muslim energy of the people, hey, this is our identity, this is our religion. You, of course, have religious fundamentalists that say, this is not haram for women to be walking around in public in bikinis, whatever it would be. And so then what comes out of that, you try to suppress it with Western values and all of these things. And then there's backlash when economic trouble comes from the 75 oil crash, and that results in the 1979 Iranian Revolution.
Right. And I'll just, going back to the Cold War and sort of the context there, like this is a playbook that many countries, including Vietnam and Korea, they start to play, which is we have this bifurcated global economy. We've got the Soviet Union on one side and America on the other side. And they tried to play that. They knew that was leverage. And so it essentially became America's prerogative to say we can't have a leader playing both sides. We can't have a leader who's using this as leverage, and this is where sort of the puppet installation of a leader. This is the playbook that America and American intelligence continually ran. So that's the point there.
Right. Why play your hand when you can just redeal yourself from the deck?
Right. Exactly. And so you use the CIA, you use intelligence, you use all of these different tactics to try to basically win a country to your side. But what's the context here? So you have this new leader, the Shah. And basically, all of this sort of religious fervor, he's more or less suppressing, censorship and censorship of the news and those sorts of things. But what you see in history is there was one group of people that he didn't censor, and it was the clerics. It was the Ayatollah. And so you have all of these clerics in Iran. That's as it's becoming more Western and more Western. What are they doing? They're incorporating within their sermons, within their preaching and their teaching of Islam,
Political messaging.
political messages. And this is creating this fervor.
And it's primarily rural, but those rural farm boys are all conscripted by law into the military. And so they're being radicalized on the home front, conscripted into the military, and then this comes out in the revolution that you look, and it would be kind of like America. Wait, 50-50, half of these are from the urban areas, half of these are farm boys from the rural South. Like in America, you could imagine if you told a good old boy from Alabama, hey, there's an uprising going on down there in Alabama or Florida. You get down there, he's beginning like, wait, I have more allegiance to my home state, where I'm from, than I do to the federal government here in D.C. where I've been stationed. Same thing in Iran. They're radicalized on the rural side of things with the clerics and the fundamentalists, but conscripted to serve in the military, which comes back to bite them in the revolution.
Yeah.
Right. And then so you have this, as we build toward the Iranian Revolution in 78, late 78, early 79, you have this sort of traditionalist, they call themselves traditionalists, and they say, we want to get back to Sharia law. We want a fundamentally Islamic state. You have, and it's essentially a multi-party system. So you have the traditionalists, you have the monarch, and that's the Shah. That's basically America's puppet. And then you have this group of communists, and you have actually several communist parties in Iran in the 1970s. And all of these sort of factions are vying for power. It becomes kind of like a chessboard. And what the Carter administration does is they start to step back and say, okay, we can't have a specific policy here. We know we don't like the communists. But we also see that the Shah is dramatically losing power to the traditionalist sort of Sharia law fundamentalists. And the U.S. started to take a step back, which as the U.S. sort of stops applying the pressure toward Westernization, you start to see a lot of these protests and demonstrations and riots, and those things start to creep up until you get to the point where, and it's ironic, Carter says in 1977, he calls Iran an island of stability. Within a year from that statement, you have a revolution.
Wow.
And so as the U.S. steps back and this revolution starts to occur, the Shah is exiled. And this is actually partly due to health reasons, but predominantly because he actually felt his presence there, and he had the sort of the soldiers, the military there was
Went
actually
to
loyal
Morocco, leukemia.
right? Yeah. So he goes to Morocco, he's exiled, and at that moment, all of the sort of pro-monarchy forces have basically lost all sort of fervor or hope in maintaining the current state of affairs there. And within a year, the Ayatollah, who was exiled, then the clerical leader who's sort of making all of these proclamations about an Islamic state, he returns and immediately seizes power. And the Shah, from that moment, is exiled. He dies shortly after, I think, in Egypt, or either Morocco or Egypt. He's exiled and dies within a few years. And from that moment, we've had an Islamic State in Iran, who has continually sort of been at sort of in a contentious position with the West. Sanctions here, sanctions there, through time.
They have been the death to America chance. Iran, with its population and everything, has been the center for Islamic terror in many ways. You have a number of different cells and groups that have operated within it. The Ayatollah himself, they're very hostile to the West. So there's the uprising right now. Those people, generally, it's a mix. Some of it probably being Christians, secular Muslims. They're not the ones that really care about the West. They're not interested in our influence. They're mad at the current regime.
Right.
But the regime that was installed in 79, the Ayatollah, and then it's his son right now reigning, that has certainly been the very anti-West, anti-America, the quintessential death to America chance for the last 45 years.
But I guess my larger point, looking at it from a 30,000-foot view, is just to say that it's not that there's no historical precedence with Iran being very hostile to the Christian West. That's true. But what we're seeing right now is not the same old, same old. What we're seeing right now is in many ways completely novel, because we're not seeing an Islamic revolt to Western interference trying to set up our sacred democracy and Western, civilization and virtues and values and those kinds of things. What we're actually seeing is, in many ways, a somewhat secular Western revolt and somewhat Christian Western revolt to the Islamic emphasis there. And so my point is, you're seeing the people themselves on the ground, not all of them, but a significant demonstration. And it's not coming from the Muslim side of the aisle. I mean, they are Muslims, many of them, at least culturally, and some of them, are devoted religiously. But you're seeing Christian Iranians, and you're also seeing secular Iranians, and they're actually standing up to the Muslim regime and saying, that's enough. We need to eat. We need to be able to feed our kids. Quit ticking everybody off. We don't care about nukes. Right, your nuclear program and all this kind of stuff that you're doing that's causing us.
It's been in development for 500 years.
Right, for 500 years, Iran has been developing
2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, 2 weeks away. My entire lifetime, they've been 2 weeks away. And so the people on the ground themselves, it's not Westerners, but people in Iran, both from a secular Western cultural standpoint and a Christian Western religious and cultural standpoint, are saying to their own government leaders, we're done with this Islamic terrorism crap. Cut it out. You're ticking off the entire world, and the world is then boycotting us, and we can't feed our kids. You need to cut it out. So my point is, with that going on the ground, for the West, it's one thing, if it's, all right, they're chanting death to America, and there's actually proof of nuclear weapons and not just, the age-old threat of 2 weeks away, then that's one thing. And that's partly what we've experienced in the past. And even then, I think we handled it in really stupid ways. But that's not what's happening today. What's happening today is almost the exact reverse of that. It's the people in Iran themselves, a significant growing number, saying we're done with the radical Islam stuff, at least politically and in our government. We need to chill out, play nice with the rest of the world so that we're not blacklisted with our, economically, so that we can feed our children. In other words, if that's what's happening with the Iranian people, for the West, Israel, which is not really the West, but they think they are, and America and European countries that say, man, we need to get boots on the ground and we need to go and do this and do that. No. I think you need to pull back, stop the interference, and see what the Iranian people can do. Let them cook, let it play out a little bit, and see if there might be a regime change that maybe for once we don't orchestrate, but their own people actually figure out a way to make the country not hostile. And there's the workings of it. There's the rise of Christian faith. There's a pushback against at least the more extreme Islamic political positions. And
a push towards monarchy, a push towards bring back the king, someone that embodies our values, that represents us, that'll fight for us on the national stage.
And he would, obviously, he would be a Muslim king at this point. Christianity is still the minority report, rapidly growing, but the minority report. He would be a Muslim king. But what they're pushing for is a Muslim king who's not building nukes, who's not ticking off the West, and who makes sure, in terms of geopolitics, to play nice so that they can economically take care of them.
And he advocates for freedom of religion. The son of the Shah, who he himself has said, I would come back. If the current government is ousted, I would come back and rule. We don't know if he'd be able to. His inexperience might hurt him. But he himself has said he favors freedom of religion in Iran, which would be great for Christians. Now, in a Christian nation, we personally don't want freedom of religion. Freedom of religion pretty much equals freedom to blaspheme. But for Christians there, new converts in a majority hostile Muslim country, I mean, all else being equal, okay, you have a prime minister Islamic cleric with harsh suppression of Christianity, or a pretty secular modern Muslim who says, we should have freedom of religion. Yeah. All else being equal, for my brothers and sisters in Christ, in Iran, in the growing church there, you should favor that one.
You should, objectively better.
And that's what you see. I mean, if you think about just transition periods have to happen for the Christianization of a nation or of an empire. You can think back to the early church and what happened before Rome was declared an actual Christian empire. You saw these sort of punishments and restrictions and all of these things slowly be eroded.
It started to lessen.
And transition until you can actually have a leader who comes and says, no, our
Constantine,
country, Constantine, our country actually is a Christian nation. And just to bolster your point about actually letting things play out, this, in the history, we jump from the Iranian Revolution to today. But the reality is, this is not the first time that something like this has occurred, even in this millennia. So you can go back to the Green Movement in 2009. There were election disputes in Iran, and you saw localized protests saying things like, where's my vote? Where is the say of the people? And that was also crushed by the Ayatollah and violence. I think the estimates were something like 40 deaths. Later in 2019, you see a similar protest over economic sanctions, and this fuel hike of 50 to 200% are some of the estimates. And the people come again, this time nationwide, saying we need this Ayatollah deposed. We need a person who cares.
He's been in that office since '89. The son of the Ayatollah who took over after the Iranian Revolution. He's been in this office since '89. So almost over 30 years.
Right.
And they're like, we're done with him.
And they're suffering. And then, so that's 2019. You see these nationwide protests. And here, and by the way, crushed again. You ask, well, what happened? Or is it going to work? 1,500 people on the high end died in those protests. I mean, just the military literally firing on protesters. And you saw similar things, just to be clear, in these instances, internet blackouts. It's all the same playbook that the Ayatollah is running here. And so that's 2019. So you have 2009, 2019, and then here we are today. Same thing happening, even more fervor. You're seeing it build. You're seeing the discontent economically, religiously. All of these things are coming to a head. And then you add on top of that Israel's influence in the U.S. and the West broadly, applying even more pressure. This is the Trump locked and loaded. This is the 12-day war back in the summer of 2025. All of these things are applying so much pressure to the regime there that it really is a question: how much longer can they stand? How much longer until there is an official policy from the U.S. and from the West more broadly about regime change? And I don't think it's far.
Yeah, and I see too also a bent towards nationalism. This has been going on globally, I would say, since the end
worldwide.
of the Cold War. Russia is a great example. I mean, Russia, the Bolshevik Revolution, a small kind of multi-ethnic coalition. They seize the government and they carry out basically decades of terror. But communism ends, at least in the USSR, when it disbands in '89. So you could consider Russia the first victim of globalism, communism, whatever you want to call it. They never really achieved full communism, but they were well on their way with socialism. '89, it collapses. In the 35 years or so that have followed that, Russia has become incredibly nationalistic. There's actually a document, I think it's by 2036, Russia intends that 90 to 95% of Russians, when asked what their identity is, that they would say Russians. They wouldn't say Yugoslavian or Slavic or this. They would identify with Russia. It'd be very similar if America said, our goal in imbuing our values in the people that live here is that by 2036, 95% of people living in America would say, I'm American. They wouldn't say I'm Asian American, I'm African American, that they would say American. So Russia, you can consider them having gotten the illness, the bug, the worst, the first, but then they're well on their way to being much more nationalistic, much more Christian. Abortion rates that were really high during the Soviet Union, those have fallen. And then other countries, they didn't undergo communism, for example, they're kind of falling into place. You see this with the rise of nationalism in Britain, here in the United States. But also in Iran, I think you see the people there, they're saying, who cares, like you said, about nukes on a global stage? We want to be able to eat. We want a monarch. We want to have pride. I mean, this used to be ancient Persia. These were a people that ruled vast amounts of land, and they were wealthy. And Iran has been wealthy in its past, and the people are saying, give us Iran for Iranians. Like the religion, the Muslim, Christian pieces aside, even just nationalistically, the people are saying, we want a government that works for us, and they are far from an isolated case. And you can expect, as different countries fall in line, Russia kind of being the foremost of the world powers that are doing it, other small nations are going to kind of start to do the same thing. They're going to look and say their government works for them. Their government cares for them. I think of how Poland, the records of sexual assault compared to other Western European countries, it's fractions, an 80th of the amount, because they haven't let immigrants in.
That's right.
And so people are going to start looking and say, wait, their women aren't being assaulted by immigrants.
Right.
We want that for us. Yep. We want to be a nation with borders.
Poland is
all over the world. That's happening.
Virtually entirely white.
Right.
So you're right. This is a worldwide phenomenon that we've been seeing for multiple years at this point. There's a full-on rejection of globalism, not so much from our elites, and not just elites in our country, but every single country. It's like the elites kind of push back. They're trying to maintain, the status quo, but it's a populist uprising in Hungary, in El Salvador, in America, and the populist uprising saying we want to return to nationalism, and the people willing to at least temporarily, and I'm not saying it actually would be temporary, but lend extraordinary powers to whatever populist leader could get elected in their national context to give them that kind of nationalism that puts their people first, right? If you're in Iran, right? It's Iran first. If you're in America, America first. And so everybody's basically looking at their nation and saying, our leaders don't care for us. They care for the bottom line, they care for the GDP, they care for this, that, and the other, but they don't actually care for our people. And there's a populist revolt in all these different places. And some of these leaders have been, to varying degrees, successful. I would say one of the most successful political leader right now in his country, where the people they were fed up and they put him in power, and he's actually been able to change the rule book, so to speak, is Bukele in El Salvador. He's got like 90% favorability, and was able to change the term limits. He's President Bukele, but functionally King Bukele. Right. And he is not super fond of Israel. He's a big component of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency,
which has paid off huge for their government.
Which has paid off
tons
huge
of money
for the
into
government,
it.
and part of that is as an investment economically, but also part of it is even broader than that. It's to wean El Salvador, his nation, his people that he loves and wants to care for as a civil father, weaning them off of the centralized banking system and usury and exorbitant amounts of interest and these kinds of things. And cryptocurrency he sees as a viable solution that could achieve that, a betterment for his people. And so that's what we see right now to varying degrees. In America right now, I'll just be honest, and I think everybody feels this, El Salvador, they're like, the masses, the populace, the people, we're going to be behind Bukele to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Right. And clean up our country. El Salvador is for El Salvador. In America, same kind of thing. We're going to, throw our weight behind Trump. And Trump is not Bukele.
No.
So Bukele did it for his people.
And they love him. He is one of the most, as far as approval ratings go, it's Vladimir Putin in Russia and President Bukele.
That's right.
96 to 97% approval rating. That is, imagine that here in the United States. Trump's approval rating, I think it's what, 40s, low 40s to 50s, divided. 350 million people, almost split it down the middle. Half the people love him, half the people hate him. You go to these countries, 95 out of 100 people, I love the president. I love what he's doing. He's doing a great job. Well, yeah, but he's rewriting the Constitution and taking power. Well, I don't care. I'm safe. I have a job that can feed my family. Who cares about a piece of paper if I'm sitting here, my life is so much better than it was 10 years ago? Nobody cares about that stuff. They want someone who fights for them.
It's the meme with two guys who are sitting on the curb, and a gun behind him. And he's like, well, at least we upheld the Constitution. And he shoots the first guy and is about to shoot the second. Like that's everybody, I think, is starting to instinctively get that. They're like, no, like the Constitution, I still maintain it's a beautiful document. The main failure of the Constitution is some of the latter amendments after the first 10. Beyond that, getting to authorial intent with the first. And beyond that, the main failure in my mind, my purview of the founders is that they were not explicit in naming the Lord Jesus Christ as King of these United States. And so adopting a preamble of the Apostles' Creed or something like that. Other than that, I like the Constitution, but here's what people are recognizing. We can't just Constitution even harder. You can vote your way into some of these messes, but as the old adage goes, someone typically has to shoot their way out. That's just the way that it goes. And so I said it a while back on Twitter. I'll say it again here, but it was a short tweet, got a lot of attention because it resonated with the people in America. I said, we have to recognize, even if we love the Constitution was written for a country that no longer exists. The Constitution was written for a country that no longer exists. And that's what we're starting to experience. That's what they've experienced in El Salvador, in Hungary, in Russia, all these different places. To some degree, Argentina. He's done a good job, but he's also kind of a lib. Libertarianism is not viable long term.
Right.
Leave me alone. The side that wants to be left alone will always lose to the side that wants to win. And so I think there will be problems that they will face in terms of longevity. But that's what people are also feeling in America. And they thought that Trump was going to be that guy. I mean, he literally tweeted out. I remember I was stoked. I was like, babe, wake up.
It's happening.
Trump is Napoleon posting, right? We all remember on X where he posted, he was quoting Napoleon. And he said, he who saves his country violates no law. And I was like, we're back. We're back. And then shortly after, I got in the mail my Fell For It Again badge. And I had to put it up on the wall along with all the other ones. I think Trump in some ways has been a precursor. I'm grateful for some of the things he's done, but he is not Bukele. He is not the king. He is not. He's not going to be the guy who saves the country. He is not, because he has made it explicitly clear by this point, he is not willing to do what it takes. He's not willing to cross the Rubicon. And he only has, it's not like, oh, well, he still has 3 years. He has months until the midterms where he becomes effectively a lame duck president. And that's where we're at. But in terms of the future, looking beyond Trump, and that's how people have to be thinking. MAGA is dead. MAGA's done. It's America first. And the question is, who are going to be the front runners? Who is going to come and fill that space? You got guys like Thomas Massey. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm grateful for her, but personally, I don't want a blonde woman leading the charge. I'd like to see her at home. I think she's a sweet woman. She didn't betray her people. God bless Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'll say that 100%. God bless her. She's not a raging Zionist. I do, just on principle though, I would like to visit her house and have tea together and have a wonderful conversation and bring
Maybe
my wife.
some pie.
But I don't, just on principle, it needs to be Christian men. It needs to be Christian men. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But my point, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, you got Nick Fuentes, not as a politician, but as a voice. And now you're seeing, even at local levels, state levels, guys like James Fishback, guys like Casey Putz. Is that how you say it?
Push, I think.
Push. It's P-U-T-S-C-H. Or, yes, S-C-H. P-U-T-S-C-H. And so, can I unveil?
Do
Can
it.
I announce?
Do it.
All right. So next Monday, we have James Fishback coming on the show. And next Friday, we have Casey running for Ohio to try to beat out Vivek coming on the show. In XR, we're not playing around. We're going to be bringing you real politicians running real races that actually have a real shot. I'm not saying it's in the bag. It's going to be tough. Those guys are going to have to work hard because they're working against incumbents that have the MAGA endorsement from Trump.
The Trump endorsement, which is working against our interests right now.
Exactly. And that's what we have to realize. You can be grateful. Praise God for Trump. He animated, right? An entire generation. America first. From now on, only America first. Praise God. And that's great. And he did some good things. Appointing judges. I'm grateful for that. And the overturning of Roe and these kinds of things. We can be forever grateful for that. But we have to recognize, just like Israel, they're like, man, Saul did some really great things. Okay, but the Spirit of God is with David now.
Right.
The Spirit of God is not with Saul. Saul did some good things, but then at a certain point, Saul, as Samuel, the prophet said, you were once small in your own eyes, but now you think you're a big deal. And so Saul was used by the Lord in humility to do incredible things, and Israel can always forever be grateful for how the Lord used Saul. But at a certain point, he was no longer small in his own eyes, and he actually became a hindrance rather than a help to the furtherment and the betterment of Israel. And the Spirit left Saul, the Spirit of the Lord, and was with this little shepherd boy that nobody thought, like this guy, who, like, I'll be honest, when I look at Trump and I look at Nick, it kind of... I see Saul and David, and one of the, if you've ever read 48, I forget the exact title, but 48 Rules,
Laws of Power.
Laws of Power. One of them is don't ever be bigger than the current guy who's the top guy, right? And that's literally what happened with David and Saul. Is they come back and Saul's like, all right, I appreciate David. He's my right hand guy. He just killed Goliath for us. This is awesome. Let's honor David. But then he comes back and hears the people and they're singing. The women are dancing in the streets and singing. Saul, we like that guy. He's good. He killed his thousands, but David, his tens of thousands. And right now there's kind of the whispers. You can feel it in the ground and the populace. It's like MAGA killed its thousands, but America first, its tens of thousands. Trump, his thousands, but Nick, his tens of thousands. And so Trump has a choice, and it feels like he's kind of already made it. We'll always leave out hope. We'll pray for him. And again, we can honor him. But it doesn't seem like he's going to be the guy. He's not willing to cross the Rubicon like Bukele did, like some other leaders are doing. But that's the global phenomenon right now, is a move away from global secularism, gay race communism, and moving back to nationalism. The people saying, I want my leaders to be from me, a civil father that nurtures his own citizens. And the guys who are willing to do it are beloved, 96, 97% approval ratings. And the guys who aren't willing to do it, it's not just that Trump was always, in the low 40s with his, when he came in, initially in this second term, just a few months, it wasn't even that long ago, just a few months back, like 8-9 months back, Trump was doing well. He was polling well.
I think it was in the 60s at its peak, low
And
60s
he has dropped
approval.
significantly. And with young men particularly,
'Cause they went
he's
left.
plummeted. Oh, because those young men became Democrats.
Yeah.
No, because they are far to the right of Donald Trump. And so that's what's going on. And the point is to cover the news, because this is a big global story. But beyond just the news, it's to show that if you don't think the global return to nationalism is just that global, well, it's not just El Salvador, it's not just Hungary, it's not just Russia, it's not just America trying, but we got the neocons in the way, aka now MAGA in the way. It's not just that. If you need an argument from the lesser to the greater, Iran. It's happening there also. Yeah. Their people are saying nationalism, care about us, play nice with the rest of the world, but mostly just stop it. Just untangle yourself from the rest of the world. Stop the nuke program. Stop this. Transport the oil, and Iran needs to be for Iran.
Yeah, and I just want to make 2 points with respect to nationalism and the rise of nationalism and why that's good. One, on the geopolitical front. So if you just think about economics, right? You think about game theory. When you have a nation that is for the nation, it's for the people of the nation, and it's actually much easier to deal with that nation because you actually have a very clear picture of their history, a clear picture of their interest in and sort of the geography of where they're at, and sort of the different threats and the things that are going on in the nation. So nationalism is good with respect to America's relations with other nations. We should strive to be at peace with all men. We should strive to be at peace with all nations. And so when we see it, this fervor, this nationalistic fervor rising in nations, we should, as Christians, more or less support that nation be for that nation.
Yes.
But the second point is, and we're not making the argument, by the way, that this nationalism is a Christian nationalism in Iran. I think that would be too far to say. But what we can say is we just think about Christ winning the nations. It is easier to win a nation under a system of nationalism. It's easier to preach the gospel under a system of nationalism than it would be, for example, under an Islamic state, an Islamic regime. And so even if
Or
we think
global globalism like
Right.
China. Christianity is having a tough time catching on there because it's just a big manufacturing hub with not a lot of groundedness and rootedness. It's work, it's provide services to all the rest of the world for pennies on the dollar. Here's your tiny wage. It's tough for Christianity to catch on there. We're seeing that.
Yeah, and so if you even just think about the different options that are at play, one option is to go the route of globalism. It's to partner with Israel to be actively undermining the regime, to topple it and put in another
Actively
puppet.
undermining local governments
Right.
with their own people.
Right.
Not a good look.
And so that's the sort of the pressure from the side of Israel that we can feel, which is, hey, let's go in and just force our hand onto this nation. And that we know that. We've seen that playbook 5-6 times in the last 70 years. That doesn't work. But there's another option. What if there was a third option? So the third option is we actually step back. We step back and allow this nationalistic fervor. We allow the actual comings and goings within a nation and their concerns economically, religiously, all of those things play out. And the foundation that comes from that is one that we can actually work with. We can work with as just a nation that wants to be hospitable, a nation that wants to be in good relations with other nations, but we can also work with that as Christians.
Right.
And that's the key point here is because we do care about Iranian Christians. We don't want them here per se, but we do care about them, and we want them to have a life where they can live and worship Christ in a context where they're safe and where they can actually do the leverage evangelism to spread the gospel. And that has to happen within the nation. America, it is not our place, nor are we particularly good at doing that ourselves.
Right.
And so it all comes back to this idea of, well, what should America do? Right now, we can see Trump is actually making the threats toward this like globalistic, Israel first sort of ideology to say, no, we actually are going to get involved. We're going to change the regime, not for us per se, although maybe there's some kickbacks with respect to oil and those sorts of things, but for Israel's sake. And that just, it's not going to work. And so all that to say, Iran isn't a Christian nation. We're not making an argument that these protests and these demonstrations aren't necessarily just liberal secularism dressed differently, because in all likelihood, that's what they are.
Yeah.
But we can make the point that for better or for worse, that happening is good for the nation in that the people are actually going to be reflected in power rather than this Islamic state top down, forcing the gospel out, punishing Christians for speaking the truth, those sorts of things.
Yeah, well said.
We want to
gotta
get to
transition to ICE.
We do. And
Yep.
this is almost a little bit of a data point, at least in the new year, that the Trump administration might be kind of taking some cues. So, unrelated to ICE, Trump announced looking to ban large corporations from owning single family homes. Now, we've been chimping for this, us ourselves, many others, for probably close to a year, if not longer than that. And it's kind of cool to see, hey, we don't want 50-year mortgages. We want big conglomerates, big hedge funds, unable to buy single family homes and rent them out for pennies on the dollar forever, which is huge. He also directed, this was just yesterday, an unnamed entity to buy $200 billion worth of mortgage bonds. That would help to drive down demand for the bonds, lowering the interest rate, which would make homes more affordable on your monthly payment. So those are two W's. I think we could also say, on the third point related to these ICE shootings, since the new year, it seems like ICE has basically had the leash taken off. Even after the shooting, which we're about to describe, Vice President J.D. Vance came out on X and he said, the Vice President, the President, Congress, ICE, we have your back. You do something in the field of duty, you're under duress, you're trying to do your job, it seems like you attempted to do it well. We have your back. We're not here to criticize and put the microscope on and then step back and watch your life be destroyed. Like Derek Chauvin would be an example. The whole police force all basically abandoning him, throwing him to the wolves of the social justice warriors. This admin so far at least has said, we're not going to do that. They were out, they were doing their job, they were resisted, they were attacked, and they were justified. And so in the last 72 hours, there have been 3 shootings involving ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, another agency tasked with deportations. The first one, the bigger one, happened on Wednesday, and it happened in Minnesota. Renee Nicole Good, a mother, 37-year-old mother of 3, married to a woman. She was married previously to 2 men, with which she had her 3 children that she has now, married to another woman, so a lesbian, a social justice advocate to the max, pride flag in bio, anti-ICE. It even appears some other sources have said she was trained, like she carried around a whistle, like, ICE is here, I'm blowing the whistle. If anyone's an illegal immigrant, they can get out of the way. Radical social justice warrior. You can watch the video. We're not going to play it here. We're not going to do a legal analysis, but she was blocking the way, actively blocking the way of officers attempting to do their job. There was a confrontation. An officer felt as though he was about to be run over, and she was shot and she was killed. Again, in the backlash to that, there's been tons of it. The mayor, Jacob Frey, there of Minneapolis, he's like, ICE needs to get the F out of Minneapolis. So tons of resistance from local politicians, local leftists. This is what ICE is encountering everywhere. They're encountering it in Chicago. They're encountering it in Portland. They're encountering it in Boston. They're going and people are hitting them. People are trying to take their weapons away from them. People are taking cars and blocking the streets. We saw probably 8 to 9 months ago in Los Angeles, pelting LAPD officers with bricks and rocks from overpasses. And so ICE has continuously encountered this, but now you've got a little bit of the Empire Strikes Back. ICE agent said, no, you can't run over an ICE agent with your vehicle. And if you attempt to do that, something that could kill a federal officer, we are permitted to respond with force. The second story is even more flagrant. So now we're not just talking about, yes, unfortunately, an American citizen, a mother, maybe she got scared. In this case, yesterday, there was a shooting in Portland. 2 suspected Tren de Aragua gang associates, let loose on the American streets by Joe Biden, weaponized their vehicle against Border Patrol in Portland. So taking your vehicle, attempting to run over Border Patrol agents. The agent took immediate action to defend himself and others, shooting them. The driver of the vehicle, listen to the type of people that are out here trying to run over ICE officers and Border Patrol officers. The driver of the vehicle, Luis David Nico Moncada, search that in the Civil War registry, if you will, is a criminal illegal alien from Venezuela and suspected Tren de Aragua gang member. He illegally entered in 2022 and was released into the country by the Biden admin. Since then, he was arrested for DUI, not good, and unauthorized use of a vehicle. He is a final order of removal. So released into the country, racked up felonies already, and has an order to be removed. His passenger, it doesn't get better from here, Yorlenis Betzabeth Zambrano Contreras.
Terrible.
Oh my goodness. Is a criminal, this was the passenger in the car that tried to run them over, a criminal illegal alien from Venezuela and is associated as well with Tren de Aragua. She illegally entered the U.S. in 2023 near El Paso, Texas, and was released into this country by the Biden admin. Since illegally entering, law-abiding citizen, pays her taxes, being productive. Oh, she played an active role in the gang's prostitution ring and was involved in a prior shooting in Portland. And so you have Renee Nicole Good, Minneapolis, and then just yesterday in Portland, 2 gang members, a man with his prostitute, attempting to run over Border Patrol agents. And the state, per Romans 13, which has the monopoly on lethal force, says, no, we're done with that.
Yep.
To which we say, we mourn especially the loss of life. That's sad, especially a woman.
Yep.
Like, it should not be women in confrontation with federal officers in the street. But if she tries to run you over with her car, the state has been given force. So we mourn the loss of life on that one. It doesn't appear that these 2 have died from their wounds, but we celebrate federal agents that have the weight of the law doing righteous work of deportation, saying, no, we have guns for a reason.
Yes. Yep. You got to do it.
And it doesn't help when, you have a sitting governor, Tim Walz, is actively saying, we need to peacefully protest what these ICE agents are doing. You're seeing this pitting of sort of state authority over against federal authority. And it's actually, the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday, ICE shooting in Minnesota raises rare legal questions. And so you have this shooting, and basically what local prosecutors are saying is, we want to charge this guy. We want to probe this guy for shooting this woman and put him in jail, similar to what we did with Derek Chauvin. And the Trump administration, DHS, and the Justice Department aren't cooperating.
Good.
They're not going to let these state prosecutors and state officials be involved in this investigation and this probe into the shooting. This rift between the federal and state governments, it's really coming to a head. It's the similar thing is happening in Portland. You have Portland officials saying, protest ICE, protest what the Trump administration, the federal government, is doing in our local cities. And really, this is where we're at. These leaders in these states, these state officials, the governor of Minnesota, saying these things, they are causing this conflict. They are indirectly the cause of these kinds of deaths, because they are not allowing the federal government to actually do their legal duty, which is to find illegal immigrants and send them out of the country. That is the Trump administration's prerogative. They have control of immigration policy. They have control of ICE and DHS. And they should be allowed to do their jobs undeterred by residents of these locales in these states.
You know which women have never been shot by ICE? Women inside their homes making pies. Shout out to Mostly Peaceful Merchandise. He gave us a $2 super chat. So true, King. He said, ICE has never shot women making pies. If we could just make women great again by getting women to make great pies again, staying in their domestic sphere, a lady of the hearth, not out in the public square protesting. And for the record, I would also include social media as the digital form of the public square. So I'd like to get women out of that too. What? Did he just? Yes. So women, go home. Digitally, go home, right? You don't need to be shouting and berating men in the public square digitally on social media. And you certainly don't need to be using your car to try to run over ICE workers in the physical public square. You want to be a woman and be safe. It's like, oh, I can't believe this happened. I don't know what country I'm living in. What has the world come to? I don't feel safe for my life. There's a very safe place for you. If you can't take the heat, get back in the kitchen. In this case, right? If you can't take the heat, get back in the kitchen, and God will bless it immensely. All right, this is what we need to do. We got to go to our super chats. We've got a lot of them. You guys, well done. We brought the news.
We did.
Brought the news. I hope you guys have been blessed by this episode. The second segment of our episode, we're going to go another hour or so, is dealing with super chats, and we take our time. Here's the deal. And we have held to this consistently. And there have been some episodes, live streams, where it's been a marathon. But our deal, our promise to you is that if you send us a super chat, comment, or question, we are going to read it live on the air. We will answer your questions as best we can. We will, engage with your comment as best we can. Sometimes we may disagree, but if you give us a super chat, that's the deal, is that we will read that super chat live on the air. And we're going to come back and deal with the super chats right after a final message from our sponsor. But I want to say one thing real quick, just as a reminder, because we have people piling onto the live stream, which is great. Do us a favor while we're still live. For those of you who are listening right now and it's still live, share the video, especially on X, like for the algorithm, and on YouTube, and on Rumble. But share the video, like the video. Share the video, like the video. Don't just leave a comment. If you want to help us get it out, and we need your help, then you need to share the video, like the video, and then, of course, make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on X and subscribe on Rumble. We appreciate you guys and all your support. Get your super chats in. We're going to go to one final commercial break, and we'll be right back. Hey guys, in case you haven't heard, right now we have a 10-part series with one of the most controversial and significant voices in American politics. That is none other than Nicholas J. Fuentes, the man, the myth, the legend. And you did hear me correctly. It's not a singular interview. This is a 10-part series, 10 episodes, each approximately an hour in length. And we are dripping out this series to the public, but you have to wait. It's coming out one episode per week on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. However, if you want to get all 10 episodes today, ad-free, early access, they are exclusively available on patreon.com. And as a special limited time offer, you can also get 2 hardcover copies, signed copies of our brand new book, The Hyphenated Heresy, Judeo-Christianity. Go over to patreon.com/NXR Studios today to take advantage of these offers. For those of you who are new to NXR Studios, you may not be aware, but we actually have a sister organization. It's a 501c3 nonprofit Christian organization that goes by the name Right Response Ministries. See, all the cultural commentary and political analysis that you've grown to be accustomed to, you know and love here with NXR, the theological foundation for that, that's what we do over with Right Response Ministries. Historic Christian doctrines that undergird all of our cultural and political ideas. Now, Right Response Ministries, because it's a charitable organization, it predominantly runs by your generosity. So, if you'd like to help support that organization, you can do so by going to rightresponseministries.com/donate. Give a tax-free donation today, again, at rightresponseministries.com/donate. All right, we're back. First super chat comes from Skills8363. Just gave us some money, threw us a bone. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Your support means a lot.
Bomani Igloo.
Bomani Igloo. All right, thank you for the help there. He said, "Oh my gosh, by golly, me mom died in the holly." Little poetry there. We will not necessarily say whether we support or whether we deny, but the deal, as I already said, is you send in a super chat, we will read it live on the air. We appreciate your support. This is Savad Dakota. It's
Dakota Davis.
Dakota
just
Davis,
backwards. Yeah. He just puts it backwards. Yeah. So it's Dakota Davis, 8618. Do you read the number backwards too? I don't know. But he gave us a super chat. We appreciate that. No comment, just giving us some support. Oh, he's got a super chat underneath it. He said, "My super chat wouldn't send with my comment attached. So here it is. If you're going to publicly use the serrated edge with a nagging woman, make sure to use..."
A bad word.
Oh, the C word, or it's sin. Okay, so this requires some reference, because there's a lot of people tuning in and they're like, what in the world is he talking about? So basically, there's a Reformed minister. I'm just going to try not to pick on him and leave him alone. But Reformed minister who famously used the C word describing a couple of women in one of his blogs once upon a time, a few years ago. And that was categorized, not by everybody. Some people, there was backlash, but some people really defended him and said this is appropriate use of language and use of that word. It was spelled out in the blog.
Did you say what was done that warranted calling a woman that?
Yeah,
someone had melted down purity rings and formed with them a statute of an anatomical region.
Yes.
Literally. A woman who's self-professed, I think satanic priestess, that said, I'm going to take purity rings from Christians that have discarded them, and I'm going to melt them down and form a statue.
A phallus?
Even worse.
Ugh.
I'm going to form a statue even worse than the golden calf.
Yeah.
That's why he said, you're acting like XYZ.
That's right. Yep. And then, said the word. But the point is that, I got in a lot of trouble the other day for, calling a particular woman retarded online, because she was acting retarded. And, And people are saying, well, it's okay when this reform minister over here uses the C word, but it's not okay. So anyways, that's the framework. If you're wondering the reference, that's what Dakota Davis is saying is he's being sarcastic and saying, hey, you're allowed to use a serrated edge, right? Sharp rhetoric online, towards women, even so long as you call them the worst word you possibly
Little
could.
known trick, just sneak it
Yeah.
in there.
But if you do it the way that I did, which was actually much lighter, then you're going to get in trouble. Which we all know the real reason. It's because I'm Joel Webbon.
I think you
that's
even
the reason.
clarified too. You said the average woman on social media.
I did. I was careful.
So some people have said like, oh, he's talking about his daughters. Why would he talk about his daughters? that
My
way?
daughters are not on
No.
social media. Oh, but he's talking about his wife. Life hack: my wife is not on social media. So no. And
Your mother? No, your mom
no,
not either.
my mom, no.
Incredible.
Yeah. So the women in my life who are willing to listen to me and love me and respect me and take my counsel, those women are not on social media. They're
And
not,
even if
they're
that
not being
were true,
retarded.
you said average.
I said average. That's right. And here's the thing: women tend not to understand averages and generalities. But yes, so I did not say all women are retarded. I didn't even say all women on social media are retarded. I said the average woman who is on social media, and what I'm implying there is not just, they have a Facebook to keep up with their friends, but they're actively speaking into the culture and these kinds of things, trying to build a following, leading, influencing on social media. Yes, that the average woman doing that is retarded. And I don't think I really have to, I don't think I have to make a case for that. I think, do I have to name names? Female influencers.
I don't think so.
I think we can all say, yeah, that's true.
I mean, none of them would go so far as like blasphemously melting down purity rings. Like,
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyways, next super chat. Wes,
Yep.
Antonio.
I can take it. So Man O' War sent $5. We greatly appreciate that, and just says America first.
Based.
Amen. Great, Wes.
All right. Code harder, not smarter. 582. Eric Prince for president of the United States. Yes and amen.
Yeah.
He had a great, I think it was $25 billion. He said, I will carry out something like 6 figures worth of deportations a month. Here's my plan to do it. He offered the government it very early on last year. He said, I'll make it happen with private contractors. He's the founder of Blackwater, correct?
Yep.
Which is a bad group of dudes. These dudes do not mess around. Like the government has rules. I was in the military. Our military has rules they have to abide by. Blackwater, the things they did in the Middle East as contractors, they got the job done. Let's just say that. And Eric Prince, a year ago, he'd offered, hey, $25 billion, I'll take care of this
You can
legal
use
problem
us
for
to
you.
track down 1.5 million illegal immigrants in the United States, is what
Yep.
he offered.
And they haven't taken him up on it yet. So hopefully they do, especially if we
crazy.
don't improve these deportation numbers
Yeah.
sooner. But even as president, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Chris Tisking, he gave us super chat, said, maybe you addressed it, but a lot of people don't believe this nationalist uprising in Iran is organic. What do we think about that?
That's some of what the current regime is saying right now in Iran. This is foreign influence. The U.S. is backing these protests. It's tough to tell what the end game of the United States would be in backing them. It's also notable too when you note these uprisings. You of course have the Shah's son, but you don't really have, as far as I'm aware, as much as I can see from Western media, you don't have a single party or a single leader kind of leading it. Remember, this is across all 31 provinces in Iran right now. So you have all 31 provinces, lack of a unified leader, a unified cohesive structure, and their angst doesn't seem to be, we want this thing instead. We're rooting for a puppet, a prop up that would be great to the U.S. for this reason or what have you. You just kind of have life sucks. We want to be able to eat. We want food. And so I would have to see some type of motivation. We're funding X, Y, and Z. We're funding this group like a Taliban or something like that. We're doing that because we think they'll be better for us here. I haven't seen the justification for that. As much as I've seen, seems relatively organic and straightforward. People want to eat. That's pretty organic. It doesn't have to
you
be
usually don't have to
manufactured.
have government, foreign government influence to incentivize people to want to be able to feed their kids. That comes pretty naturally.
And to be fair, I think the only place that we could acquiesce in terms of the inorganic nature of this is the sanctions. I think you can say, you could make the argument, and it would be plausible and reasonable to consider that the U.S.'s actions on behalf of Israel, because remember, Israel's whole argument is Iran is funding all of these sort of terrorist networks and organizations that are affecting Israel. So they would say Hezbollah, for example, Iranian-backed, and Iran is sort of the boogeyman, if you will. And so to the extent that Western nations are applying economic sanctions that are hurting the people there, you could argue that it's inorganic. But at the individual level, if I'm just an Iranian citizen and I'm struggling to put food on the table, or I'm struggling to literally pay my bills to outpace inflation. I mean, if I don't pay my electric bill today, tomorrow it's going to be 2 times as much as it is today.
Right.
And so those kinds of factors, those economic factors, are certainly organic. They're certainly felt at this sort of individual level within the nation. So that's how I would lay it out.
So good comment, and time will have to tell.
Yeah, it takes time. All right, Cody
Legaline?
Legaline. Yep. Appreciate that. Gave us a super chat. He said, I enjoyed your series with Nick Fuentes. I appreciate your guys' work. How close do you think that we are to federal military versus state? I would say that the conditions are set and that it's very close to meriting that. That said, I also want to hedge my bet. So in terms of, justifying it, I think we're just about there. In terms of will it actually happen, the nothing ever happens bros win 99% of bets for a reason. So I think that right now, I don't really see, that's kind of what we were saying earlier in terms of Trump's second term. I don't see him, I don't feel like I have the precedent for Donald Trump crossing the Rubicon to say, yeah, he'll cross it here. I feel like he has stayed his hand. He's been reserved. He's not really fully, producing, executing the things that he said that he would. So right now, it doesn't feel very likely. But if we're trying to just simply make an argument of whether or not it would be justified, Tim Walz, in my assessment, if you can get the president of Venezuela, right, within 48 hours, send the teams in, kidnap him, take him over here to the, I believe that Tim Walz should be SEAL Team 6, should be sent in. They should take him. They should bring him to the White House. He should be given a fair trial. And then after that, he should be hung for treason.
Yeah.
And not to be a Constitution bro, but even if you think about Constitution.
George Washington said that, by the way, hanging for treason.
Yeah, it's true. And it happened in the Revolutionary War. But just to go back to the Constitution and make this point very clear, which is in the preamble of the Constitution, why is this government being formed? One of those clauses or one of those points is to promote the general welfare. Right. That is the point of the Constitution, one of the points and one of the purposes and ends of the Constitution. The president is the chief executive and is to carry out his constitutional duty. If you think about supremacy, the supremacy clause contained within the Constitution, the federal government in specific realms, and particularly common defense, promoting the general welfare, domestic tranquility, all of these aspects, it is the federal government's predominant prerogative to be able to export illegal immigrants. All that to say, if we really do have a context of federal versus state, what we're talking about here is state, and particularly Democratic and liberal state governors, breaking the law. Saying the federal government can't carry out its mandate that is contained within the Constitution. And constitutional scholars and legal scholars will say this if they're honest. And so that's just it, all that to say, if this does happen, if it won't necessarily even be Trump crossing the Rubicon, it will be these Democratic officials crossing the Rubicon.
But it won't feel like that because they've already crossed the Rubicon for decades. That's what it took me a while to figure this out. But you don't really even hardly need a king. I would probably be cool with a king. But people forget because it's been so long. It's never happened in my lifetime. It's been a very long time. But on paper, according to the rules, the president of the United States has extraordinary executive powers.
Yep.
Right.
Executive, execution, executive. They go hand in hand, guys. It's in the name. But no, he has extraordinary powers. And so it's not like every time Trump has tapped into, a drop of what's actually afforded to him in what the founders had envisioned for the president and what he was able to do, people are like, fascist. Not even close. Not even close. There's so much that he could do. And with being perfectly constitutional. And so, but he has to do it. It's like, oh, well, the judges are holding him up. No, guys, it's like that's so silly. It's like, oh, the judges are holding. That judge is a 120-pound, black woman. She's not holding him up.
An Obama appointee.
Right.
In an unrelated state.
She's not holding him up. Trump, you have an army. Like, well, she's holding up with paperwork. That's great. Burn the papers. Go in. Be president. Save the country. You're the guy who tweeted out, "He who saves his country violates no law." Let's see it. Do it. We've got a country to save. No more playing games. No, arrest Tim Walz, bring him to D.C., try him, and hang him. Honor Christ. Save the country. This is what we got to do. That's my opinion. Tell us how you really
I'll
feel.
just say
There you
briefly on states too. The states where you won't see conflict, there's a program called 287G, where ICE and local law enforcement collaborate. That's the biggest thing that would have to happen is local officers would have to feel this antagonism towards ICE. But there are about 10 states, so about 40 states have this 287G program. They collaborate with federal law enforcement, specifically ICE. There's about 10 states, your Californias, your Connecticut's, Washington, Oregon, Illinois. They don't collaborate. And so if you're going to see conflict, federal versus state, it's going to be in those states, and it would be because your mayors and your governors drive a wedge between law enforcement, work them up, and say, ICE is not a federal agent that you need to be collaborating with on law enforcement, on all these different things, driving a wedge and say, no, they're the enemy. But honestly, if you're a cop, a local law enforcement guy, it means you're probably not 300 pounds, you know how to use a gun, and you know a little bit how to fight. And there's not very many of those people, not very many of those men that also aren't pro-deportation. Like, let's just be honest. Local law enforcement is 90% right-wing guys. Yep. NYPD and the U.S. Marines were the two organizations that had more giving to Trump than to, I think, it was Biden in the 2020. Every other, your Citibank, your Google, all of it blue.
Right.
NYPD, U.S. Marines, the most masculine men out there, they were the ones that donated to Trump. So, local law enforcement, LAPD, California PD turning on ICE, maybe. I don't know if I see it, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Bebo Pakoko. Bebo Pakoko. All right, anyways, he gave us a super chat. We appreciate that. He said, "Thank you, Joel and crew. You have brought me hope. Can you recommend a church in the Denver metro area? If it's a church like ours, then the answer is no. If it's a decent church, because opting out of going to church, period, is not a viable option for a Christian, somebody who follows Christ. You've got to go to church, even if the church isn't everything that you would want it to be. So a church like ours, no. But a church that would be decent, that you could go to, I'm sure there's one. Is there anything we can recommend?
So he's technically in Boulder, Chase Davis's church, but that's northwest of Denver. It's a bit of a drive, but it's called the Well Church. So you could go there. That's the only one I'm aware of in
There was
Colorado,
on the Right Response, one of the podcasts, I think we got a super chat about a church in Colorado at some point. Probably a little
that's right.
far away if you remember that.
That's right. Hey, guys, that's a person who just... what's the name of that church? Tech guys.
You can send me an email, Wesley at nxrstudios.com.
I think his name is Kevin. What's the guy's name? You literally sent me an email.
I would also say, too, there was an initiative. It's called Fight 312. It was a law banning people from using the wrong pronouns for someone else. And a number of different churches in the area, including the Well Church, they band together as well. So you have a decent amount of pastors. You could look at that. Fight 312 was like an organization. It had a webpage with names.
Got it.
Look at the pastors that stood up against that law in Colorado as well.
Yeah, that's a good way to go. Here's a guy, I believe he's in Colorado, somewhere near Denver. I'll give you his email. It's at Zach, Zach, Kohlberg, Kul, is that two L's? LLBERG 1, the number 1, at gmail.com. So Zach with a CH, not CK. And then Kohlberg, Kullberg 1, the number 1, at gmail.com. I believe that is a local pastor who's Christian nationalist and shares a lot of the same values that we do, who I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, he's in Colorado. And for somebody who doesn't live in Colorado, all of Colorado is Denver. So
I was about to say, in my mind, it's Colorado, Denver. They're the same picture.
Yeah, it's the same picture. Okay, next one. This dude rocks. He's a consistent supporter. We really appreciate that. He said, "I'm not familiar with Ruslan. But I want to say that I commend you for willingly inviting and accommodating a guest on your show that disagrees. More Christian content creators need to encourage good faith discussions across lines. Yeah, so cat's out of the bag. We are going to have Ruslan. I don't know what his last name is.
Katie?
Katie is not a name. Katie is not a name. So I did a post about because it all ties together. You know, the woman who I responded to about women on social media, the average woman on social media being retarded. It was in that same post. She basically was saying that Joel, she was asserting that Joel wants capital punishment for interracial marriage, which is not even close to my position. I do not want that. Let the record state. So she woke up, began her day with breakfast and slander, right? So another day that ends in Y for this individual. And so I was responding to her and explaining, what my position would be and what other people in my sphere of Christian nationalism, what they would think, and some of the reasoning for that. And people lost their mind because interracial marriage is a sacrament of the post-war consensus. And so Ruslan was one of the people who was like, what happened to Joel? He's lost his mind. He used to be such a great guy, because I went out on his show. I think he said a year ago, but I looked back. It was, I think, summer of 2023. So about, what would that be? About 2.5 years, coming up on 3 years ago. He invited me, which was very gracious, and I appreciate it, to go on his show and talk about theonomy. And he was like, he went on my show, and Ruslan is, he's a white guy who's married to a black woman. He's in an interracial marriage. And he was like, and he didn't, he seemed fine with my marriage then. What happened to him? And it's like, if I went and visited his home today, it wouldn't be any different. What am I going to do? Sit at the dinner table and say, I disapprove of you? And that's not even my position. And so anyways, I think he is very confused, and he's a liberal. He's a Christian. He's a brother in Christ, but he is a liberal. And 20th century liberalism, dressing itself up as Christianity is what and not to pick on him, that's 90% of Christians today. They don't get it. They think that what calls itself Christianity for the last 60 years is what Christianity has always been for 2,000 years, and they're just not familiar that anybody has ever believed anything before the 1960s. So he's not unusually liberal. He's just kind of he's a normie. He's just the typical Christian guy today who thinks that, I don't know, whatever. So we're going to try to be respectful, and we've invited him, and he's going to bring a guest, right? So it's not 3-on-1. I said, hey, you can bring a guy. And so we are scheduled to release that. We're going to try to, if we can, we'll do it live. But it depends when he's able to come out. But the goal is either doing it live or releasing it next Thursday. Next Thursday? Is it that fast?
It's
6
that
days
fast.
from now? Nice. It's that fast. So that's going to be a banger. It's going to be, him articulating his position and me articulating my position and having a chance to clarify what that position is. And I won't take the time to get into all the different details of that right now. So yes, we are going to have Ruslan on the show, and we're honored that he's willing to come.
There we go.
All right.
Anomic 2705 sent a super chat. Thank you. And they said, this is a high compliment. This channel is based.
Nice.
Love it.
Praise God.
All right. The Edro Whistle, longtime supporter, sent in a super chat, said, may I ask why any use the word retarded as is? Why use the word retarded?
It's a good word. I think it's a good word. It's kind of, to quote the great Michael Scott, right? You don't call someone retarded who's actually retarded, but you call your friends retarded when they're acting retarded. I just think that some of these words, we've given them too much power. There is power, the power of life and death in the tongue. The Bible speaks of this. But some of these words, we've mystified them. We've holstered them up as though it's some kind of magical spell. No. And also, I would also make the argument that mockery is a powerful tactic. Part of the reason that we have so many problems that we do today is because we have a theater kid occupied government. We have the class of individuals that historically would have been, without any legislation, without any formal, process, would have just been culturally ostracized. Like, shut up, nerd, right? Like, they would have been bullied. And nature is healing. And I thank God for that. I see that. I see that there is a recourse. There's a return, as the kids would say, we must return. And there is like a return to the natural order, where theater kids and actually nerds don't get to be in charge anymore, because when they are, people die. They're actually very, very cruel people. Skinny little nerds who come in with all their ideas of basically gay race communism. You can basically summarize the 20th century as a theater kid occupied Western governments. And so being able to say, no, we're not doing that anymore. As Sam Hyde said, no, we're not doing that anymore. You're getting called a slur. I think there's actually something profound to that.
Proverbs talks a lot about the fool, too. Again and again, it uses this term to say, stop being foolish,
Right.
stop being retarded. It's a powerful word to say, you are not thinking right now.
Right.
Don't think with your belly. Don't think with your instincts. Don't think with lust. Wisen up, shape up, listen to discipline. And so to say to someone in a modern context, you're acting retarded.
Yep.
Seriously, use your brain. Grow up, use some discipline. That is to speak exactly the way tons of biblical authors spoke in the Bible.
Yep. They use sharp language. There is a biblical precedent for using very sharp language. Biblical authors in Scripture called certain individuals, certain women, whores, harlots. There's some sharp language as an example in the Bible. Okay, next one. What's the next one?
Josiah B. Dyer sent $5 and says, curious to know if y'all have listened to, and if so, what you think about Simon Dixon's take on current global restructuring of power.
Have not heard it.
I
Haven't,
have not
unfortunately.
either.
Sounds
No.
interesting, though.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
We'll check it out. All right, this dude rocks again, coming in second time. What is the actual roadblock among Christian public speakers from sitting down to discuss differences? How much of it is pride, genuinely believing their side, or political fears? Seems as though division reigns. I think a lot of it, honestly, is just, we've said this before, I'll say it again, it's a turf war. It really is. Because what I've seen is guys who are, on the right, whether they are or not, it's a sliding scale. It's not just like right, left. There's a spectrum. Guys who are more right-leaning, ministers, pastors, have always been willing to associate and host somebody for a conversation to their left. Somebody who they disagree with, but who's more liberal than they are. But usually not more right. And I think it's not for principled reasons. It is very much for practical, bottom line, turf war, reasons. Because there's a brand to think about after all, and the brand for some of these guys is we're the rowdy bunch. We're the muscular wing of Christianity or whatever. And so to host somebody who's rowdier isn't a great look for their brand, because they were supposed to be that, And so I really do think that, the real reason is not a principled reason. I think the real reason in many cases is simply that would not be good for the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're still holding on to this sort of liberal consensus that dominated the 2010s, which is like, if you talk to someone, it's akin to sort of like endorsing them.
Right.
And I think even people on the right sort of subscribe to that, even mostly implicitly. And I think a lot of that's going on. I think it's just, it's optics. It's, to your point, pragmatism and sort of visually, I don't want to be seen with the person. I don't want to endorse their views. And so, I think we're breaking out of that, though. I think
The spell is breaking. Nature is healing.
right, exactly. As the Overton window shifts, what were considered sort of undiscussable topics are becoming discussable. That's why, for example, we're going to have Ruslan here, right, to talk about something that even 7 years ago, 10 years ago would just be unfathomable. It's just like you couldn't talk to someone about that. You couldn't argue about that. So
Even Nick's series, like this episode from Tuesday, what is world Jewry? Like that is not something that even 2 years ago would have received acclaim, appreciation. This was super helpful. It would be like, off the reservation, can't believe this.
Can't believe this.
Shut it down.
Shut it down.
And today, it's like, wow, super helpful, well explained. Thank you for bringing people to that. That's just 2 years how things have changed. Forget 10 to 20.
Yep.
Right. Okay, Antonio, will you take the next one?
Yep. Sean Meager, 1581, sent $5 and says, what can you say about the idea that the America First movement is actually to identify enemies? Love the recent content. Well, I'll read it again. What can you say about the idea that the America First movement is actually to identify enemies?
That's true. I think that's absolutely true. I think by putting forward a certain standard, it's a litmus test. Like it's kind of like Gideon, where he takes all his men down to the pool to drink, and the ones who lap it up like a dog versus the ones who scoop up the water in their hands. It's kind of it's like the meme, where is it three like this, or three like this? Are you English or German? Let's say, what's your tell, right? What's the giveaway? And some of these America First, messaging and virtues that are being put forward really are serving as a litmus test to kind of smoke out the people who are really just they're not MAGA, they're MIGA. They want to make Israel great. And I think Thomas Massey has done a great job with that. I mean, he really has exposed so many people. It's like, okay, so yeah, you say you love America, you want to make it great again. Okay, can we get a list of the pedophiles? Can we do that?
Preyed on American girls?
Right. Oh, we can't do that? Why? Oh, Mossad was involved. Israeli intelligence, and there's some connections here. Okay, so then you're not really for America. You're for Israel.
Right.
And so, so I think America First, I think it's viable. I think it has legs, and I think it's going to take some time. So I don't think it's necessarily 2028. Nick Fuentes is going to be president. I don't think he'd be qualified. You got to be 35. I think it'd have to be like 2032. But so I'm not predicting something like that in the very near future. But I do think you're going to have to let it cook, America First, for a little bit. But I really think by 2032, 2036 for sure, America First will have every bit of the momentum and the weight, the significance as MAGA has in the past. And in the meantime, the kind of foreshadow, just the tremors, right, before the big earthquake that goes off, just the tremors of America First now are already making MAGA have to shape up a little bit.
Right.
It's working as kind of like a rule of law of just constantly exposing the neocons and the Israel First shills and those kinds of things.
We'll get a sense too. These two candidates that we're about to have on, James Fishback and Casey, their primaries, they have an uphill battle to win.
Yeah.
But if you win 30% of the vote on an anti-immigration, anti-H-1B visa, so it's like, well, it's legal immigration, don't care. Anti-AI farms or AI data servers going in all over Florida farmland. We're going to get to see how well that message resonates with Floridans in August. With Casey, I believe February is the primary. We're going to see how much the Viveka's running as a Republican, how much the anti-foreigner, again, sentiment, how much that's catching on. It could be 10%, it could be 30%, maybe they even win a primary. But those are going to be great litmus tests early on to see, okay, does this message resonate with 20% of Florida voters? Oh, it does?
That's
in just a
significant.
couple years, in 2 years,
Right.
20% of people have been won over to our cause? Well, then you just run it back, run the play,
Then in
2030?
8 years later, or 10 years later, because this would be the midterms, 2036 then, this will be... I think that we're very close. I think within just a matter of years to where if you're a politician who's pro-Israel, you're like you're hiding your Israeli flag underneath the floorboards.
Yeah.
You're turning down AIPAC money.
You're turning down AIPAC money
Putting
because
skin
you're-
in the game.
Yeah, well, because you're like, if I take money from AIPAC, if I have an Israeli flag in the office, I'm done. It's suicide, for a politician in America. That day is coming.
And I would just say quickly in terms of political movements, because someone might say, well, what about the Tea Party movement? What about all of these movements that for a short period of time, 2 to 4 years, exhibited this mass fervor and growing sentiment, and then they fizzled out? And no one belongs to that movement anymore. No one really claims that movement. A lot of people denounce the movement and those sorts of things.
Tea Party of the 2010s,
Right.
the alt-right of 2016.
Right. And the question would stand into, okay, what is different about America First? And I think it comes back to this idea, politically speaking, which is movements can't be defined. Movements that want to live long can't be defined only by what they're against.
Right.
A movement has to
you're
know
right.
what it's for. It has to have a policy prescription, answers. You need information. You need money. You need power and consolidation. And all of those things, they take smart men. They take men like Fishback, right? They take men who are educated. They understand the political landscape. They know how to navigate through it, avoiding the snaps, the chasms, the snares, all of those things that people set out for them to move toward something, to move toward a specific policy goal or achievement. And I think we're seeing a lot of that emerge out of the America First movement, which was at one point a lot of just discontent, a lot of, well, I don't like that and I don't like that. And it's all being synthesized. It's all sort of consolidating into a set of ideas, or one might say even a doctrine. And that doctrine has legs.
Yep. Well said. All right. Here's the next one. This is from Justin JMZ. He said, can't wait to read the book, right? He's talking about this little bad boy right here.
Not so
the
little.
Hyphenated Heresy, not so little, 250 pages and thoroughly footnoted. The Hyphenated Heresy, Judeo-Christianity. Myself and Jordan Hall are the authors with that. And we're really excited. Released it at this point, 1 week. Exactly 1 week. Last Friday is when we released it, and we are closing in on 1,500 copies sold at this point. So well over 1,000. We are blown away and humbled and just really grateful to you guys and the positive response that the book has received. It certainly received a negative response as well, but
Well, I will say a lot of
positive.
people, they're digging into it and they're like, this is awesome. Can't wait to finish it. And so it's
Right.
not just, I bought the book, I'm excited because our guys published something. It's,
Right.
Oh, and I'm actually reading it. This
Oh,
is
it's
super
actually
informative
good.
and helpful.
And it really is helpful as just a constant resource that you'll be able to go back to. Because of the footnotes and the citations and all those kinds of things. So it won't just make an argument, emoting, but actually a logical argument and give you citations for where this actually happened. It brings receipts. So definitely check out the book. Again, it's The Hyphenated Heresy, Judeo-Christianity. It's on Amazon right now. You can just search it, and or you can if you join our Patreon, you'll get early access for all 10 parts of the Nick series. We just released on Wednesday the second episode, so you're looking at still like 8 weeks. If you want to get the rest of the series with it dripping out on its weekly schedule to the public. But if you want to get early access, ad-free to the whole Nick Fuentes series, you can sign up instead of the $10 tier on Patreon. You can do the $50 tier, and you'll get the full Nick series, but you'll also get not just one but 2 hardcover copies signed by myself and Jordan Hall, and we'll ship those to you. And so that's awesome. So you can get the book that way as well by signing up for I think it's the gold tier on Patreon. But yeah, thanks for your encouragement. We appreciate it. The book's doing really well. Next one is Stryker. Stryker said, how gay was Nick Fuentes in person? And my answer is not gay at all.
No?
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, he was very courteous when we were here.
Yeah,
We had a great time.
very
with him.
respectful. Great time. Okay, this one I'm going to need help. Wes, you're terminally online, so I trust that you know what this means. But Poop Smith 123. All right, I'm just reading the name.
I'm glad you read the name. Not
He
me.
said, "Yeah, I read it. He said, so it turns out William Wolfe's based Christian Prince was actually just J.D. Vance this entire time. What does he mean by that?
I think he's saying William Wolfe, others, Josh Abbotoy, prior to Trump's inauguration, Trump getting the nomination, going on to become president, they had a lot of rhetoric. We still have it. I mean, Stephen Wolfe, maybe he's referencing Stephen Wolfe. Stephen Wolfe has a chapter in his book, The Case for Christian Nationalism, on the Christian Prince. And so prior to all of that, there never was a guy. So it's not like we need a Christian Prince and we've got our finger on the pulse. It's this guy and we hope he ascends. Since taking office, though, J.D. Vance, and we have some concerns with J.D. Vance.
We have big
We
concerns.
don't like this. We don't like that. But what I think he's kind of getting at is that as far as Christianity goes, J.D. Vance has been explicit. America is a Christian nation, and it should remain
Praise God.
a Christian nation, which is awesome. And so I think he's kind of saying, hey, these guys wanted a Christian prince.
So I just couldn't tell because I couldn't tell if he was making fun of William Wolfe and was against J.D. Vance, or if he was saying this is a good thing. J.D. Vance,
But we
is our
didn't
guy.
hear that type of rhetoric, even
Right.
anti-white discrimination. J.D. Vance has never,
That's what I
prior
was gonna
to
say.
being vice president, even the first 6 to 8 months, he never stuck up for white men. Hey,
Never.
white men are being
Yep.
discriminated. White Americans are being targeted.
Not
And
until
recently,
AmFest at the
about
TPUSA
2 months ago.
AmFest, and it was, to be honest, it was still weak, but it was something, and I'm hopeful. But he said, and in America, you no longer have to apologize for being white anymore.
Yep.
And so that's good.
And he also
saying-
shared that article on the discrimination that men have gone through and said the one group that is discriminated in America
Yep.
is white men, which is great.
Right, and Elon Musk would be similar. He's kind of the same kind of rhetoric. Is in South Africa, that's where Musk is from. There's actually currently on the books, and this is true. There are more laws, formal laws on the books against white people in South Africa than there were laws against black people during apartheid.
Wow.
That's like, my goodness. And then Elon Musk, of course, follows it up by saying, and I'm against both, and it just needs to be a fair, meritocracy all the way around, and blah blah blah. So neither one. What I'm trying to say is neither Vance nor Musk, lots of guys that would fall into this category. None of them are necessarily pro-white, but they at least are saying, hey, can we just not be anti-white? And I would like to see, and it's going to take time. Like, this is something in terms of the massive on the big stage of politics, in the nation as a whole. The Overton window has not shifted this far, but I eventually would like to see not just hey, let's stop being anti-white and just fair meritocracy for everybody, red and yellow, black and white. They are precious in His sight. I would like to see Western countries. So I'm not saying the whole world needs to be pro-white, because a lot of countries aren't white. They should be whatever their country is, pro that. But I do think that in American context, if our heritage and our history was founded by white Christian men, and currently, even 250 years later, the majority of our country is still white and religiously Christian, then I don't think it's just let's stop telling people let's start telling people to stop punishing white people or being anti-white. No, I think you can find ways to positively esteem the majority and founding stock, descendants of the founding stock of your country, and say, this is actually not only should it not be despised, certainly it shouldn't be despised, but this actually should be esteemed. It actually should be esteemed. Yes, we are a Christian country, first and foremost, religion first, but then after that, we also are predominantly a white country, and we're proud of that, and that's a good thing. And so I haven't seen, you guys, I'm only mentioning that just to say, I have not seen any major political figure be pro-white. I have seen some at least start to chastise, and I praise God for it, the anti-white discrimination. What do you guys think?
James Fishback's rhetoric is very also pro-white in a good way,
true.
not hateful or discriminatory.
Right, yeah. It's
we
not
need
like,
to bring back drinking fountains separated by race.
Nobody's saying that. No.
But positively saying white people are being replaced. White people are being discriminated against. White people are primarily the victims of assault, rape, and all of these different things when foreigners are coming in. So I think Fishback would be one of them.
You're right.
And there's others at the lower level. And I would even say Trump, too, in his policy, as far as nations that they're saying we're not taking immigrants from and ones they're taking refugees from.
That's true.
South Africa is one of the few ones. We're not taking,
right.
at least at this point, Venezuelan refugees or refugees from this war in Africa. Trump's policy, not him saying it, his policy has been somewhat pro-white, pro-European, and then saying other third world countries that would not be white, we're going to take less immigration, less work from them, with the exception of just one big continent right
India.
there in South Asia, India.
Which is one of our concerns when it comes to Vance.
Yep.
Like, his wife seems like a wonderful woman. She really does. But she is Indian. His natural affections are torn. There is kind of an inner war there. He would be tempted. I would be tempted too if my wife was Indian. So I'm not saying, JD is malicious or sinister. I'm not making any of those claims. I'm just saying that having the most powerful man in the world, if he became president, having a wife from another country does I think, pose at least the temptation of a conflict of interest. And so I think that's, you can say that in a respectful way. That's perfectly fair to say. On the other hand, though, we were probably harsher on J.D. Vance a few months ago, but we want to be up to date, and he has over the last couple of months been encouraging.
Yeah, and those are
really
real
has.
developments. He's
Those
never
are new
said this
developments.
before.
Right? He
Now
never said
has.
anything, against anti-white discrimination, and then he did.
Yep.
And so people change. I've changed. I get crap for it all the time. They're like, "Well, you just started believing this 4 years ago." It's like, yeah, people grow, people learn, they develop. One more guy. He's not a political guy, but I think it's worth throwing him a bone. Matt Walsh has been pretty based on being pro-white and against all the anti-white discrimination stuff, which is encouraging. So, all right, next super chat. Anybody?
This is the same guy. I don't have to say the name again, do I?
Don't say the name again. It's
All right.
enough.
Same guy who sent in the super chat about William Wolf and J.D. Vance. Sent in another super chat, very generous, very kind, and said, if someone is getting funding from Mark Andreessen, this is his VC firm, and then he puts in parentheses, new founding with Nate Fisher, Claremont alum, getting interviews, Blaze TV guys, getting published in American Moment, which is a Claremont publication. You are not building a parallel institution.
What do you think?
I understand what those people are saying, connecting the dots of different funding and everything like that. I think also at a certain level too, you have to wait and see.
Yep.
People are not as simple as
that's what
camps
I thought. When we read the first one, I was like, I think he's being negative.
Okay.
I
Which
think
the
he's
follow-up
being
does say he
negative
is.
towards
Seemed like he
William
is.
Wolf and negative towards JD. That's what I expected. Yeah, I think sometimes you have to give it time. Love hopes all things. At the same time, as I've recently said on X, don't be retarded, right? So you can love and hope, but there's a distinction between hope and naivety.
Yep.
Yeah,
So you can have a holy suspicion while hoping. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think Wes was about to say this, but people aren't as simple as I think we can tend to paint them. I would also argue that strategies aren't as simple as sort of the purest track. You think about credentialism and institutions and those sorts of things. Like some people just have a calculus that's just different than one you might choose, and again, only time really tells where they land. Like you could suggest their compromise, but they actually end up leveraging the institution or leveraging those credentials for something that
Because
you would
they're
favor.
building different things. So you're
Right.
building media. Yeah, your relationships publicly matter. You're building something like this or something like that relies on funding from a totally different world. That's just a different objective. It doesn't justify anything immoral that you're doing, but you do have to understand the calculus of a Joel is different from someone else who's building a university or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yep. Some people are just built different, Just built different.
We got a Rumble super chat.
Whoa!
Whoa!
Snap. Rumble super
Hold the
chat.
phone.
Go ahead and read it.
All right. OSBoss52,
Oh, boss, that's a Rumble title right there.
$10 for the cause of truth, new fan.
Awesome. Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you. That means the world. We're glad you're here. Last super chat. This is from Daniel Bartos G50. He gave us a $50 super chat. Appreciate that. Thank you, Daniel. He said, appreciate the courage of you men. God bless. 4 Pillars merchandise coming in 2026? Question mark.
The people have
The
been asking.
people have, here's the deal. The voice of the people, the voice of God. Yeah, I'll tell you why that's wrong. Because the people are retarded. No, sometimes the people just, I don't care what your
The
voice
people
is.
want
but in
their
this
merch.
case, I think
Give
the
the
people are
people what
right.
they
Yeah,
want.
we got to give them what they want. Now, I'll be honest. This 4 pillar, I have some ideas for it. Wes, you have a keen eye for design, but conceptually, this shirt cannot be that specific. Because we don't want people getting arrested, wearing our shirt. But I
shirt
have
with
some
race
ideas.
realist on it.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah,
It's not a job interview shirt. It's not a date night shirt. That is a home gym shirt at best.
Jew pill. It's like you wear the shirt to bed and that's it. No, I think we can make something that's like awesome design, and you know what the 4 pillars are, and you leave the words off of it. But yeah, I've been thinking about this. I'm being completely honest, not just saying it because we got the super. We're doing it. We're doing a 4 pillar shirt this year of our Lord 2026. The people want it, and in this case, the people are not retarded, and we're going to give it to them.
Yep.
Any more? I think that's it, right?
Oh, we got two more.
all right.
Parabolize 94 said they released the body cam footage. This is in reference to the shooting of Renee
What do you
Nicole
think that's
Good.
gonna look like?
I watched it on the side here while we were doing it just to be
All
up
right.
to date, and she tried to run him over with her car.
Of course.
Like at the end of the day.
Classic.
She pushed the gas. Someone was in front of it. Oh, I didn't know this would happen. Well, that's how physics work. And so I don't think the body cam, it most certainly doesn't make it look like the officer acted imprudently.
Good.
It's literally going to come down to, will the federal side of things step in and protect the officer, which at this point, it looks like they're doing so.
Praise God. Okay, and then we've got Parabolize 94.
That's the one I just read. It's
Okay,
third
my
one.
bad. Last one. All right, it's from the name that we already read. All right, let's say it one more time. You say it this time.
Oh, I
said it
have
last
to?
time. Yes, I already did it.
Poop Smith 1 2 3. But you're not getting it read on air again. Here's the deal. You
That's
come
it.
back, you comment again. We're giving you a new
No,
name.
seriously, yeah.
You have a weekend.
You
to
have a
change your
weekend to
name.
change your handle. All right. He said, new founding is pushing techno AI optimism. That's true. Wolf, and this is not Stephen. He'd be talking about William Wolf. Goes to NatCon and does Bible commentary with Josh Hammer. We don't like Josh Hammer. I'm not pro Vance, obviously. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And to be fair, neither are we. We're not. We have done episodes about Vance, and we have a whole episode coming out on J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel and Palantir with myself and Nick Fuentes. And you will see that episode shortly. What we're saying, the only caveat that we're providing here is that this is a conversation in real time. And so there is a maturity and not being naive and being able to see some of the things that you're picking up on. We don't think you're crazy. But there's also a maturity and watching the situation develop on the ground and to just harden yourself in your position to say, okay, so J.D. Vance all of a sudden is actually using some really positive rhetoric that he never used before. So I was right to be more critical previously because these were things you weren't saying.
Right.
But there's a real development. And even though there's a real development now, I'm not even going to consider. I'm not even going to bake that into the pie. I think that's foolish and unfair. All right, we've got another super chat. We got to drive it home. This is from Raynard. He gave us a $20 super chat. Appreciate it. Hi from Brush Prairie, Washington. Love the new channel. My wife and I just welcomed our first child. Let's go. Ellen Grace Schneider today. Wow. And
Dude, live from the
still
hospital
caught the
room.
show. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
He's literally catching the baby. Babe, turn it up.
Yep. Babe, wake up. NXR just dropped.
Your wife is in labor. It's like, hey, you're a little loud, sweetheart. I can't hear Joel. God bless you. You're a patriot. Praise be to God. He goes on, very blessed. Yes, you are. Here to support. Take care, gentlemen. And just for the record, when I said yes, you are, I don't mean very blessed because you're watching the show, but because God gave you a baby girl. Praise God. That's awesome. All right, that's the show for today. We got to go. Otherwise, more super chats will come in. We appreciate it. Again, like and share the video. Share it on X. We're still broadcasting live right now. Do it now. Like and share the video on X, like and share the video on Rumble, like and share the video on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe and click the bell. My handle on X is @JoelWebbin. Your handle?
@Wesley_Todd_.
At Antonio Griffith, the last I is a 1.
Great. Thanks for tuning in. God bless. We'll see you soon.